This episode is about why slowing down triggers guilt even when you're exhausted, why your body mistakes busyness for safety, and what's actually driving the late emails, the inability to switch off, and that constant need to prove you're still committed. Well, you're going to try and understand what's really going on, and you're going to walk away with a specific move you can use the next time that guilt kicks in. So let's start with what's actually going on. What does this really look like? You're in the office and you leave on time. And the moment you leave, you instantly feel guilty. Should I have done that? What are people going to think about me? You start overthinking and start asking those questions, right? But who are you asking those questions to, right? No one in particular. And then you finally sit down in the evening and your brain starts running through everything that you didn't finish. Rest becomes another one of those things that you're failing at, right? Or you're on holiday and you can't stop checking your emails. Not because anything's urgent, because if you don't check them, actually that feels worse, right? In fact, some people don't even make it to day 2. I've worked with professionals who are sitting by the pool in the first afternoon refreshing their inboxes every half an hour. Right? Why? They know nothing's wrong. Nobody actually needs them. But the body doesn't automatically recognise that they're safe just because they're sitting on a sun lounger. All right? The nervous system is still running that old program. Now, I think this is really important to understand. Sometimes we can wear this, I always need to work as a badge of honour. And what do I mean by that? Well, for some people I've seen in my career and also as a business owner, mixing with different people, they feel that if they're not seen as being really busy or, oh my God, I'm on it all the time, there's a failure in there somewhere. All right. Now, I met someone once who definitely wore this as a badge of honour. He was actually a business owner. I know it is a little bit different when you're a business owner because obviously it's your business, but it is also your business to make sure that your business can run when you're not there, right? So what provisions are you putting in place? Now, this particular person just blew my mind really because he was bragging that he was going to Florida. He's taking his children to Florida. And then he went on to say that he was going to be working while he's out there. And we was like, really? Why? Well, I've got to, haven't I? Because there's so much going on and my business can't run without me. And we went, okay. Well, what's going to happen to your children then? Well, I'll just work at certain times. Well, so let me get this clear, I said to him. So during your amazing holiday to Florida, right, you're going to be working. So their impression of you is going to be, even on holiday, Daddy wasn't available to us. Because you're not going to be there. You're not going to be present. You're going to physically be there, but your mind isn't going to be present because it's going to be thinking about what's going on around you. So there's a few things here. That's going to be alert behaviour for your children, that Daddy's always stressed. Daddy doesn't know how to relax. And that's going to have a knock-on effect to their identity because they're going to think that's normal. The likelihood is he's probably going to get in arguments with his wife because she's left holding the babies while he's working and it's supposed to be a holiday and she's probably sick to death of him working all the time anyway. So there's going to be conflict there. Do you see? So in my opinion, he was using that as a badge of honour. And actually, I pointed out to him that you'll probably live to regret that because your kids just want to have quality time with you. They're not interested about your work. They're on holiday with you and they want to have fun with you. And that's the thing they want to remember. Now, in his case, I think he thought rest meant failing. He was failing at his business. But if he carried on with that, he's probably going to be dead in a few years' time because he'll have a heart attack because he doesn't know how to rest. But in the end, that way of life would catch up with him because you can't be in that constant state of stress all the time. So if he'd come and worked with me and we could have uncovered his identity, we could have stopped all that behaviour because he could have worked from a place of confidence, a place of self-love, a place of knowing that he is amazing and he is enough. But clearly that version of him running like that, he's got all sorts going on in his subconscious programming. Like, if I'm not performing, I'm not doing. If I'm not showing up all the time, then everything's going to fall apart around me. So the beliefs that he has to keep doing and doing and doing because he can't trust anyone else, maybe there's an element of control. All these things all become part of the issue in the identity, all right? Now, most people think that it's a discipline problem or even a boundaries problem or time management. Now, it isn't really any of those. Obviously, they do have a part in it, and if you're really disorganized and you can't organize a piss up at a brewery, then that's going to cause extra issues. But let's work on the basis that you are quite an organized person. You're quite good at time management, but it's something still not working, right? That's because it's an identity problem. Your sense of who you are has become emotionally dependent on productivity, and your nervous system has learned that stopping feels dangerous, which basically means when you try to rest, your body doesn't feel relief, it feels threatened. So that's what we're going to unpack. So let's look at how productivity became safety, right? Because this isn't by accident. This has been programmed into you, right, from your identity, right? When we talk about from the moment you conceive to whatever age you are, that's your identity timeline, right? And that's what we talk about with the identity box rewire method. Maybe when you was a child, you got praised all the time for your performance, right? Maybe you volunteered to be in the school play, or you volunteered to be the school governor, or all these things, right? Because you got praise for that by putting yourself forward. Now, I'm not knocking that, but what I'm saying is you could become that kid who only could perform to get validation, maybe from their parents. If you didn't work hard, then no one noticed it. So you had the belief that working hard equaled approval, which meant you mattered. Now, when you've got that in your programming, you obviously take this into your career. Now, you might be in your early on of your career, you might be the person that stayed late, and then you got a few promotions. Maybe you sent emails later, and that was perceived as you were really committed, right? And exhaustion became evidence you're doing it right. So that just reinforces it, doesn't it? Now, I remember from my early years in the corporate, early 20s, it was a little bit different because it was more hands-on and doing things. But before I had a family, for example, I'd work all the hours because everyone was, and we were younger and it was fun. But as you get older and as you start having your own children and things like that, the priorities change, don't they? And when I become a parent, I didn't want to work late because I wanted to get home and spend time with my son. But I always felt that kind of went against me. In fact, I know it did because one of my bosses at the time kind of brought it up once. They saw me as someone who wasn't overly committed, but actually, I worked really bloody hard when I was at work. I was organised, I knew what I needed to do, and I got my stuff done, right? But there was always that element of, oh, you're going at 5. Well, yeah, because I've got an hour and a half journey and, I've been out 12 hours. I'd like to go and see my family if that's okay. Now, back then, that was deemed quite a negative thing. But actually, the more people that do things like that, I think becomes the normal then, doesn't it? Because our families are the most important thing to us. Our mental health and well-being is the most important thing to us. Yes, having a salary is really important, but, would you rather have the salary and no longer be here, or would you rather be, living your best life and earning great money as well? But the point is, it does depend on the environment that you're working in, right? It depends on the managers that you've got. You can't change all of that, but all you can do is focus on yourself, right? The only thing you can control are your own thoughts and what you're doing. You can't control anyone else. But when it comes to calming your mind, calming your nervous system, no one can do that for you, only you can, all right? And your body has learned through programming, through learned behavior, through belief systems, and even sometimes inheriting your parents' feelings and emotions, right? I know, get your head around that, okay? So if your body is constantly in this state of fight and flight mode, it's no wonder it can't calm down. And your body learned that if you keep producing and keep doing and keep doing and doing and doing, then you'll stay safe. But actually, it's the opposite of that. So if that's your belief that you have to keep going and no one can do this for you and you've got to be in control all the time, then that has been running for whatever age you are, right? So that could be decades. If you're a senior leader with nothing to prove, but your nervous system is still reacting, that's old programming. Or maybe you're a senior leader that you feel that you do have a lot to prove, but again, that's your nervous system running that old program. And here's a little analogy for you. It's a bit like standing on a stage performing for an audience that left years ago. All right, so there's no audience there, but maybe there were the people who expected perfection from you. Maybe some of the audience members were your bosses who rewarded your overwork. Perhaps it was parents who only noticed if you achieved. They're all gone now, they're not in that audience, but you're still under that spotlight performing as if they're watching. Now, in the work I do with my clients, it is about digging deep and going into that identity, all right? Having a look round, and in that instance, it might be, well, when did you first feel that you needed to be super productive? When did you think that you had to be the responsible one, the useful one, the successful one, the strong one, right? And when we go back into their subconscious programming, we want to go back and find those scenes, we call them, those times when this was happening. Now, some examples might be, I had one recently actually. She felt it in her chest. So we went inside to her chest to find the part that was making her feel anxious in her chest, and it ended up being that when she was 3, she had to look after her younger brother in his cot, and he was trying to get out, but she just couldn't get him out, and he was crying and he got a little bit hurt, and she created the belief that it was her fault, that she failed, and she needed to be on alert now to try and help him. Now, at 3, number one, it wasn't her job to be a parent, right? But that incident, I can't remember now whether it ended up being her people pleaser or procrastination, but one of those. And that was driving her existing in her current day life, right? Stopping her from doing things. And it was all about that scene going back there. So you're never going to consciously understand what's running your show in your subconscious mind, because you just can't work it out. It's never going to be what you expect, right? And I get a lot of people go, I know exactly where this has come from. I go, oh, do you? And they go, oh yeah, it was such and such a couple of years ago. And I'm like, it really wasn't, and it might have an impact, but that won't be the root. And this is what the work we do is going back to the root cause of what caused this behavior. There was another time when someone had actually got stabbed, and they didn't actually mention it to me in the pre-talk, if you like, when we were going, and they went, oh, I didn't think that was important. And it's like, probably is quite important, because at that point your body didn't feel safe, and it created this physical reaction in your body, and that physical reaction was what was performing in the boardroom, right? So I can't remember how old he was now, but it went down his timeline. Let's say, I don't know, he was 20, say, I don't know, can't remember now. And when he was in the boardroom, he couldn't cope because his whole body just went into meltdown with this overstimulation, and his mind was overthinking. And that was due to that, amongst some other things. But the important part of this is you don't know what's in your identity box, right? You might have a good idea, you might be right, but likelihood is you're probably not, or there's some other layers in there that are actually driving your behavior. All right. So it isn't about trying harder, right? The more you work, the better it is, because that isn't the solution. It's the effort itself is the symptom. All right. So again, when I think about a client who's stressed, who's anxious, who's overwhelmed, who's really exhausted and can't switch off, they might have created a belief that my worth comes from what I do. That's quite common, right? Or I'm not good enough is the biggest one. Right, so it's very difficult, but it's very difficult to understand, I should say, but to actually shift it isn't that difficult. But once you make those shifts, the rest of your behaviours will naturally change. And this is really important, right? So if we go to the root of an issue, and maybe it's like you're not good enough, well, that's going to resolve lots of other issues, right? So if you're lacking in confidence, but you've got the core belief that you're not good enough and you're not worthy, then that might impact how you present yourself at work. That might be how you present yourself in the boardroom, or also how you present yourself in your personal life. So when you find the root cause of something, it actually ticks off a lot of other things as well. So if you said, oh, I procrastinate, I'm a people pleaser, a self-sabotage, I'm an imposter, then once we get to the core root, it might well fix those as well. So if you've got like 20, 30 presenting issues, doesn't mean you need 20 or 30 sessions. You probably need 2, maybe 3 max deep dive sessions, right? Because it's so powerful and you're going to get results that you didn't dream possible. So what I want to share with you today, right? And this is called the guilt interrupt question. Now, the next time you feel that you've got that pull to keep working, right? Whether that's on holiday or leaving the office or logging on when you're at home, and you feel that guilt, that urge, this is for you, all right? So the question actually is, what am I trying to prove right now and to whom? That's it, just one question. So we talk about the pattern interrupt, right? If you imagine that in your subconscious programming, all of these things are all just going on and on and on, but until you stop them and interrupt them, nothing's going to change. All right. So if you ask yourself just that one question, what am I trying to prove right now and to whom? That's going to stop and interrupt the pattern, because the guilt isn't about the work, right? It's about what's stopping you from understanding what's in your identity. So when you ask, what am I trying to prove? You're interrupting that automatic reaction. And then you start creating a gap between the feeling and the behavior. And then when you've got that gap, then you get to choose. All right. So let's put that into some real scenarios for you to help you understand. So maybe you're about to leave the office. Everyone else is still at their desks, right? We say everyone else, right, in inverted commas, because probably other people have gone, but the normal people that are there, right? And then you start to feel this tightness in your chest, the urge to sit back down, looking around the room. I wonder who's going to notice me. So maybe you send another email just to look busy for another 20 minutes, right? That's when I want you to ask the question, what am I trying to prove right now and to whom? And notice, I'm trying to prove I'm committed. I'm trying to prove this to people that probably aren't even watching. I'm trying to prove it to some version of myself that still believes leaving on time means I don't care enough. All right, does that make sense? That's the pattern. Now you can see it. Now you can choose to leave it or not. But the point is, just stop. And you might decide, you know what, I will stay a little bit longer, but at least you stopped the automatic response. So let's look at a scenario number 2. Maybe you're on the sofa now, you've got home, it's 9 p.m, you've done a full day's work, but your phone is just sitting next to you and you feel that pull to check the emails. So you ask, what am I trying to prove right now and to whom? And you notice, I'm trying to prove I'm still on, still reliable, still the person who never drops the ball, to a version of myself that doesn't trust that I've done enough. Now, that question doesn't make the guilt disappear, but it stops the guilt from driving the behavior. Yeah. So it's breaking the subconscious cycle. And that's what's important. It's just stopping in its track. And the more you do that, the more you'll be able to do a pattern interrupt. And again, this is the sort of thing I teach my clients, right? So we go deeper into other questions so that we can really change the patterns underneath. But obviously doing the deep dive work, that's when we really make the fundamental changes. So what changes when you start using this interrupt? Well, when you stop letting guilt drive your behavior, something will shift. Then you're going to start making decisions more from clarity rather than compulsion, right? You'll stop performing productivity and start actually being productive. And the hours you work become intentional, not reactive. And here's the thing that no one tells you, right? Your best thinking doesn't come from chronic stress. It actually comes from regulated calm. So what do we mean by that? Well, when you're stressed, your brain is just frazzled, right? You can't think straight, can you? You can't pull things from your memory. So like, let's think of being in an exam situation, right? You're really, really stressed. You might have done all the revision and you know it's there somewhere, but you just can't pull it through to the front of your mind, right? So the only way you can do that is calming your mind and calming your body. And once you start doing that, that information will come back. In the same way, like if you've lost your keys or something like that and you're, oh my God, panic, I've got to leave. Once you sort of calm yourself down a little bit and start processing, you'll go, oh, I know where they are. Which is why we quite often think of things when we're in the shower or having a bath or something like that, because you're calmer and then you can start remembering things a little bit better. So it's not, again, that you're broken. It's just that you need a different way of working, right? And stop confusing effort with worth. And it's about getting your evenings back, getting your weekends back, getting the ability to actually be present with yourself, but also present with the people that you love. And what happens, weirdly, is that you actually get more work done because you're not forcing it. And actually, you can start tapping into your intuition and that memory bank of information that you've got. So the calmer you are, the more productive you are, because you can access things that you couldn't access when you were stressed. Does that make sense? So this is what I want you to do this week, right? I want you to practice this question. Now, I want to ask you something here. If nobody was judging you, if nobody was measuring your worth by your productivity, if nobody was expecting anything from you, would you still be working this hard? Or would you finally give yourself permission to breathe? Something to think about, isn't it? The inability to stop isn't ambition, it's a survival strategy. A survival strategy that probably served you well once, maybe when you were 5, something like that. But if you're exhausted, overwhelmed, and constantly proving yourself, it may be time to update that program. So, your action this week, right? The next time you feel that guilt, leaving on time, not checking your emails, sitting still, use the guilt interrupt question and ask yourself, what am I trying to prove right now? And to whom? Do it once and see what you notice. Because true success isn't working until you collapse. True success isn't about walking away from your laptop and then feeling guilty about it. It's about spending time with the people that you love because you have done enough. And more importantly, you are enough. Now, if you've recognised yourself in this episode, whether you are that one that's guilty as charged with all these things that we've discussed today, and you do carry guilt and that inability to switch off, and actually rest makes you feel guilty, and maybe you take this as a badge of honour on your holidays, right? If that's the pattern that you're following, maybe it's time to change that programming. But what I've made for you in the interim, right, is an audio called The Evening Upgrade. It is free. It's just over 10 minutes long, and it's designed to help you actually switch off, right? So you listen to it when you go to bed, and it will help your mind and body to calm down and relax. And this is the first stage of making that change. It's my gift to you. It's free, and I'm going to drop the link in here for you. So just do a quick overview then of today. You're going to use your guilt interrupt question. What am I trying to prove right now, and to who? The effort is the symptom, not the solution. Your nervous system learned that stopping feels dangerous. Productivity becomes tied to identity, not just output. And your best decisions come from regulated calm, not chronic stress. All right. Now, I just wanted to run through a couple of questions that you might be thinking. Now, one of them might be, if I ask the question and I still feel guilty, what do I do? Well, the question doesn't remove the guilt. It stops the guilt from driving the behaviour. You can feel guilty and still leave on time. All right. What if I generally do have more work to do? Well, this isn't about ignoring your deadlines, right? This is about noticing when the urge to keep going is about proving something rather than finishing something. And I think it's important to remember that in work, yes, there are peaks and troughs, but it shouldn't always be up high like that. There should be some downs, right? And when you find that you're in peaks all the time and there are no troughs, something's not quite working right. All right. Anyway, that's enough from me. I've been Julie. I hope you enjoyed this show. Please go onto YouTube, Millerside Therapy and Coaching, like and subscribe. So thank you for watching.